Did you? I don't know if you heard the Steve Young interview, but Steve Young,
I've more read the some excerpts. I haven't really seen the interview in its entirety. Have you seen it?
I have, and his was interesting because much like Alex Smith, he praised the heck out of Brock Purdy. I think he actually did a good job of praising all three. But one thing he did at the end was basically pull out the tablecloth from underneath the dishes because he starts talking about elite quarterbacks and how that is the way of the NFL.
Here's the
And
quote.
unless,
Here's the quote, just
yeah,
so people. He says, "Do we have a quarterback that can match those 4 or 5 guys that can go light it up with their arms
yep,
and go get those yards with their legs in a big, huge moment?" Young asked during the latest edition of his podcast with Mayoko. Is that what you're
yeah,
referring to, Jesse?
yep, exactly. So he basically goes on to talk about how elite quarterbacks are the reason you win, especially in today's game, and you have to be able to match those guys and go score for score with them. And I know that a lot of people don't like the delivery, maybe, of a content creator or somebody that might question if the 49ers have that guy on the roster currently or if Brock Purdy is that guy. But he basically said what everybody's thinking, which is all of the talent on this team is great. That's awesome. Talent for talent, the 49ers match up. But do they match up where it matters most? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. And if they don't, they're not going to win a ring. And that was his stance.
Yeah, he's not wrong, right? I mean, we've
No.
talked about this ad nauseum. This is the exact topic. And then every year the Niners get close and we say, oh, never mind. I changed my mind. They're going to do it this year. They can do it with Jimmy Garoppolo. I changed my mind in 2021. Like, oh, look. And lo and behold, what happened? Jimmy G did what Jimmy G does. And this year it was different circumstances, but it was the same result, right? Ultimately, it was the quarterback getting injured rather than the quarterback being injured and playing poorly. But ultimately, it was that the quarterback just wasn't there good enough to take them over the top because it was Josh Johnson. And so, as long as you have this recurring conversation, you're never going to. To me, the sign of the fact that you have a quarterback is when what we have done this entire offseason stops, right? Like you can say Brock Purdy is the guy. You can say Trey Lance is going to be the guy. But if you have a guy, Jesse Naylor, Vish Kumar, and Larry Krueger don't get on YouTube every freaking day of the offseason and say, what are the Niners going to do at quarterback? What are they going to do with this guy at quarterback? What are they doing at quarterback, right? Like, do you think Chiefs content creators, Chiefs reporters have ever talked about the quarterback position this offseason other than what Patrick Mahomes is doing in his personal life? No. And so I think that you're absolutely right. And that's the point the Niners need to get to. And we can project about them getting to that point with all kinds of different quarterbacks. But when we actually do get to that point, which we are not at now, we will stop talking about this position the way we do. And I think when we do that, then we'll know, hey, they got a guy, whether that's Brock Purdy, whether that's Trey Lance, whether that's somebody else.
It's a weird debate, this whole quarterback debate. Like, oh, do you have a quarterback that's good enough to beat the Josh Allens, the Mahomes, the best of the best? Okay, that's part of it, but the other part of it is you got to get in that game, right? You can't win the Super Bowl if you don't get to the Super Bowl, and to win that game, you need a level of consistency from your quarterback because the odds are you're not going to get in that game unless you're hosting the conference title game. So that means you kind of got to win all the time in the regular season. So then it comes down to, well, I mean, yeah, Trey may have the highest end potential if he fulfills every ounce of it, but Brock right now, I think most people would say, and then this is all based on what we've seen up to this point. We're going to see more in the weeks ahead, but Brock is played much better football than Trey has. And there's no way around that. And so if you're going to win the Super Bowl, you got to wind up in the NFC Championship game. You probably got to host that game. Can you host it in any time in the next couple of years if you went with Trey Lance? Don't you think there would be enough inconsistency based on his total, inactivity and lack of playing time and field time. Don't you think it logically makes sense? I mean, anybody could buck the odds, and maybe Trey's that guy, but just based on the fact of his track record of where he's, what level he's coming from and how little he's played, are we now willing to give away? This team's got tons of talent. Brock was easily better than Trey last year. Now the idea of going with Trey, and it's like, well, some people want to, hey, take your lumps. Okay, but you take your lumps, you're not going to be hosting the NFC Championship game, and you may not even be a playoff team.
I would like to say that the one thing about Trey, and the thing I find difficult projecting with this, is we don't know what take your lumps looks like as in terms of wins and losses yet, right? Like last year we were supposed to find that out, and he was hurt, 5 quarters into the year. And a lot of people think that it's going to look like that because they lost to the worst team in football in the Bears. And, it's a fair and accurate projection, but that's where I don't know what the take your lumps is. And I just think back to last offseason, right? If you told me that the 49ers had a midseason situation that they had to insert Brock Purdy, everybody outside of Larry Krueger is like, that's the worst situation. They're not going to the NFC Championship game. How can they do that with the 7th-round rookie? And they did do that, right? Like, we got to see Purdy come in, immediately play well, and we got to see him go through a process, and we realized, you can go to the NFC Championship game with that quarterback. And so that's where, Krug, I understand the point you're making, and the projection based on the limited evidence we have maybe would lean you towards going there. But I can't go there saying that taking your lumps means you can't host an NFC Championship game, or you can't do this with Trey Lance, because we're yet to even see back-to-back complete games from the player and how the team looks in terms of their record, their ability to compete in back-to-back complete games.
It's just quite a projection. You're really projecting if you're, and I get the people that say, hey, look, man, Trey's 6'3", 240, athletic, great arm, great kid. He just needs some playing time and he'll get there. But, how long is that going to take? And are the Niners willing to I don't want to say sacrifice, because I don't even know that they would be sacrificing, but are they willing to take that shot? Are they willing to roll that dice and go with the younger, more inexperienced quarterback? And it might work out great, and they might wind up with the next Mahomes, or they may wind up not making the playoffs. And it's like, I think all those things are possible. Mike drops this one. He says, I'm a Iowa State fan. I watched Brock for 4 years. A lot of his play is sustainable, but 33 points a game is not. Well, all I would say to that is that I don't know how much of the 33 points a game was truly on Brock, because the Niners averaged 20 a game pre-McCaffrey and went 3-3, and then got on a run with McCaffrey and averaged 29 a game and went like what 8-1 or 10-1, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So is it really about Brock, or is it more about Christian and their ability to score lots of points with Christian?